We'll be collecting and cleaning N95 masks from hospitals, first responders, and testing sites. This system is located at the community-based testing site at the Miami Hard Rock Stadium, and it'll be operated by trained personnel in conjunction with the Florida National Guard. If you look around the state at what's going on, we wanted to do the mitigation as a country. We've really never done it to this extent before in previous pandemics, but the fear was you needed to flatten the curve because if infections spiked, it would overwhelm the hospital system, overwhelm the healthcare system. That would obviously lead to excessive deaths and other negative health outcomes. In Florida, not only did we flatten the curve, we have more hospital beds available statewide today than we did when the pandemic began. In fact, as of last night, we had the fewest number of people for COVID in the ICU than we've had since the beginning of April. So those are good signs, those are good trends, but clearly we have not seen a surge that has overwhelmed hospital capacity. In fact, down in Broward County, one of the most hard hit, you have Miami-Dade and Broward combined. I think they represent over 50% of all the cases in the state of Florida. Memorial Healthcare, big hospital system, they just collapsed an entire ICU unit because they didn't have enough patients being put in the ICU. So the system has held. We obviously plan if there's anything that happens in the future, but we had thousands of beds ready to deploy. Many of these things were deployed around different parts of the state where we thought there could be a risk, but we just haven't seen that. We've been able to bend the curve, and the hospitalizations have been far less. In March, you had newspapers running articles saying that by the third week in April, Florida would have 465,000 people hospitalized because of COVID-19. Now that's a terrifying thing to tell people because we only have 70,000 hospital beds in the entire state of Florida. So just imagine if that had come to pass, you'd have hundreds of thousands of people that wouldn't even have access to a basic hospital bed. Point of fact, now we've got about a little more than 2,000 people hospitalized in the state of Florida for COVID-19, not 465,000 people. So they were a little off in that projection, but I'm glad that we were able to beat the projections and the experts by 463,000 hospitalizations. If you want more information on what's going on, we're sending out updates. Just text FL COVID-19 to 888-777. Again, FL COVID-19 to 888-777. I have Congressman Gates here, who's been working really hard for the people of Northwest Florida, and I know as we get into this phase one and continue to move forward, he's going to be there every step of the way supporting the people here. So I want to give him a chance to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Governor. On March 29th, just about a month ago, a McClatchy reporter asked President Trump, how is it that the state of Florida seems to have fulfilled 100% of its requests for drawdowns from the National Strategic Stockpile? And President Trump was very candid. He said, look, Florida, they do a very good job. They're very aggressive at advocating for their people and for their positions. And Governor, in all the work we've done together, I've never been prouder than when the President acknowledges that our team working effectively to raise these concerns results in better care for our residents and our constituents. That work together has been bipartisan. Very early on in this process, the reason we're able to launch mobile sites today is because we got ahead of the game, and very early on in this process, I led a letter of the Florida congressional delegation that Republicans and Democrats signed on to that detailed out the specific things that would put us in a position to best respond to this crisis. And Governor, I was grateful that the Miami Herald was laudatory in their praise on the congressional delegation, but they criticized you, which was odd because it was your administration that actually built the lists that we used to go and get the stuff from the federal government for our hospital systems and for our frontline providers. And in that light,
do you have any reason why would that be the case? I just can't imagine why that would be the case. Man, we're going to have to get Inspector Clouseau out on that one.
I know you also feel a special kinship with our guardsmen and women who are here today. I recall serving with you in the Congress, and while some of us would return home for vacation as a consequence of your additional service to the country, you would go out and do drills. So I know you know the sacrifice they make to be away from their families and to be here serving our constituents. There are a few areas where the governor's work, the president's work, has aligned specifically to meet some needs in Northwest Florida, and I want to highlight those. Because we were able to get drawdowns on the front end, I could tell you that we had the CEO of Baptist Hospital able to get tests and swabs early, and he actually drove himself, Mark Faulkner did, over to Tallahassee to the Emergency Operations Center, where you had coordinated testing on the front end that allowed us to be in a good position. I serve on the President's task force with the head of Ascension Healthcare. That's a major provider in our community. Also at the HCA systems that serve Okaloosa County, Twin Cities Hospital, and Fort Walton Beach Medical Center, they were having challenges with their providers of testing equipment and reagents. And Governor, it was your office, it was the Division of Emergency Management that got on the phone and actually created better connectivity so that the purchase orders of Northwest Florida hospitals would be met faster and that we got everything we need, and we were very successful in that. And then I would also suggest that the offense that we're playing in nursing homes and in long-term care facilities is uniquely important to Northwest Floridians. I could tell you, Governor, anytime we've had even the concern, even the whiff of this virus in one of our long-term care facilities, your Department of Health has been there on time, on target. I had one facility in the Twin Cities area that had like 3 and 4 visits from the Department of Health for triple and quadruple redundancy to make sure that we were getting accurate test results. I would finally thank you for your work with our local law enforcement. We got concerns early on from our sheriffs, from our police chiefs, that the migration of folks from Louisiana over to Northwest Florida could create a hotspot here that we would have to deal with. And when Sheriff Ashley of Okaloosa County called me to reflect on that concern, I immediately patched him into the governor, and in real time the sheriff and the governor worked out the framework not only for a strong executive order, but for an enforcement regime that protected our people in Northwest Florida from that substantial potential risk. So thank you for doing that as well. The governor and I met briefly before, and there are a couple of issues in Northwest Florida that we talked about. The first is vacation rentals. In Northwest Florida, we don't have a 500 key hotel room every 1,000 feet. Because of our density that we have, we're more reliant on vacation rentals. And I'm confident that in the governor's evidence-based, measured approach, the same approach he took on the front end of this virus, that as soon as it is safe and appropriate and we enter new phases, that the governor will work with our local communities to open vacation rentals. Here is my advice to our counties and to our cities. If there are particular areas of advice or concern that you have, I would strongly encourage you to meet about those, discuss them in public, even pass resolutions regarding the conduct that you think our community is ready for. Throughout this entire process, Governor DeSantis has leaned heavily on the expertise and on the local knowledge of our local leaders. I've been in contact with our mayor about not only the health conditions, but the economic conditions that we want to make sure that we really bolster in the coming weeks and in the coming months. And I know Mayor Robinson would always say it's good to have a Navy guy like Governor DeSantis here in a great Navy town of Pensacola. So thank you for that great work, Governor. I know we've got a lot of essential work ahead on the President's task force for myself and with your task force, but we know that the brighter days for Florida are ahead of us.
Well, thanks, Congressman. And in terms of some of the monitoring, in terms of the travelers, you had the outbreak in New Orleans, which was really bad. Obviously, the outbreak in New York City was terrible. Incidentally, I mean, a lot of these people 6 weeks ago was saying Florida was going to be just like New York. If you look at the numbers, we have 2 million more people than New York. They've got about 20 times the number of fatalities than we do. The hospitalization rates couldn't be more dramatic. So those people were just wrong about Florida, and we've done much better than all those people said we would. But we knew it was a problem when you started to have people fleeing these shelter-in-place orders. And they're flying to Florida from New York. We're worried about New Orleans. So we put in really good screening processes, and we're self-isolating and quarantining people who were coming in from the hot zones. I can tell you that had a good effect. We would have had a bigger outbreak had we not done that. And that's obviously true for the New York travelers. But if it weren't for the people of Northeast Florida acting early, coming to me, saying that we had an issue, they acted early enough that we were able to really, I think, totally keep it at bay. And that would not have been the case had we just let it loose. So it's very important. Another thing I'll say before I take a couple questions, I announced today on Monday as part of phase one, we're going to begin doing our state parks so people can go. Now, there's obviously going to continue to be social distancing. We don't want to have big crowds, but if you're going out there with your family, that's a healthy thing to do. One of the things we wanted to do this whole time is really focus on what the science tells us, what the experience in different countries, in different states has showed us. And there's a great study that was done by our Department of Homeland Security. They have a biodefense center, and they analyzed how the virus reacts under sunlight, heat, and humidity. And they determined that if a virus is on a surface in direct sunlight and heat and humidity, the sunlight kills the virus quickly. They also looked at how it would be airborne with aerosols or droplets, and they made the same determination that this virus does not like the sunshine, does not like heat, does not like humidity. And so that informs us to say, you go out to a state park, or you go out and do things that are productive. As long as you're not in big groups, that's very low risk. Certainly more risky going to some of these grocery stores where people are crowding. So let's use this to our advantage and follow the science. I hear Jacksonville allowed people to walk and run on the beach 2 weeks ago, and you heard all these howls from the Northeast media. These are the same people. They have subways running in these cities, which are very dangerous, but yet they're upset about Jacksonville, and they're saying all these things. You look 2 weeks now, we're here, Jacksonville has had their cases decline. Hospitalizations have declined. That's a low-risk environment. And so we're going to continue to support activity like this that's low risk. Our parks are one of those. It's very important that we're able to do it. And the final thing I will just say is we really want Northwest Florida to be a big anchor for us going forward. As we move into phase one, I wish I could just flip a switch and say we're just going to be able to do it, but we've really got to be very methodical about it. We've got to be careful and prudent. And part of the reason is the country's never been through something like this before. If you look at the 1918 pandemic, 57, 68, they never did a national shutdown. And I tried to do it here in ways that I think mitigated damage. But nevertheless, this is what happens with the country. So as we come out of this, the virus isn't going to go away. Clearly, we have hospital capacity, and our positivity rate on tests is incredibly low. You have places around the country where out of everyone who tests, you'll have 35 or 40% that'll test positive. In Florida, in the last week, it's been between 4 and 6% test positive. Everyone else tests negative. So that's an incredible ratio, but that's an indication that you don't have real rapid expansion of the virus like you would in some of these other hotspots. But as we come out of it, we want to continue to be smart about how we're acting. This virus tends to thrive when you have large groups of people together, and usually indoors in a climate-controlled environment. But if you put 100,000 people outside, that would be risky too, even though the indoors is more risky. But if you look at these super spreading events, there was a funeral in Albany, Georgia at the beginning of March, and you had people packed in, everyone was crying, hugging, kissing, and this thing, you had a super spreader, and it just took off. It infected dozens of people. It led to a number of deaths just from that one event, and it continued to spread throughout the community. You look at the Biogen conference in Massachusetts. These are people at a business conference. They're together in close proximity, talking. Someone coughs, you're right there. Sustained contact. A lot of people there got infected. You look at these cruise ships or the Navy ships. When you're in the confined environment for a repeated amount of time, it tends to spread. So those are the things that you really got to look out for: the close contact and the enclosed environments. If you're not having close repeated contacts, then you really are doing a lot to protect yourself. And so particularly when we look at our vulnerable populations, our elderly, and those with significant underlying conditions, it's important that they obviously heed the call, which our seniors have done a great job. I mean, they've listened from the beginning. But it's also those of us who are not in those groups, make sure that we're acting in ways that are not putting those folks at risk. I mean, our order for May 4th is for folks in those groups to continue to stay at home as much as they can and avoid close contact outside the home, and that's the right guidance. But I think we all can play a role in making sure things are good. So we have responsibilities going forward. If we go forward in a responsible way, I think Florida is going to bounce back quicker than anybody. But we've got to be responsible, and we've got to be cognizant of what's going on around us. Okay. Yes. Well, I'm going to look at it. It's the first time I've known about that, but that's obviously not what we want to see. So I'll look at it. I can't off the top of my head because they're visiting. And I think it's been very, very successful. If you can identify a staff member that's infected, then you can figure out who else there they may have passed the virus on to. And that's very, very important. If you have one asymptomatic staff member, just by the nature of being in those facilities, you're in close contact with people, and it's tough. So we want to try to identify that and then isolate the people. Yes. So they're sent to a variety of different private labs, some state lab. Some of these private labs get really backed up. So if we send something to, what are they, LabCorp or Quest, we're supposed to get a decent turnaround, but what happens is sometimes it'll back up. If you look at really the last 2 weeks, if you look at the test results, I mean, the positive cases in Florida have been, for 22 million people, very low, like 500, 600, 700. There have been, I think, 3 or 4 times where you've had it as 1,000, and then you look at the number of results, it's like 15 or 20,000 results. So it gets backed up, and then they dump a lot of results. They did a result dump, I think, for yesterday, where we had 21,000 results just come in. The day before, we only had 9,000, I think, results. So this is kind of just what's happening with the back. But what we've done to cure that is once the federal government upped the amount that they reimburse for tests, it was $50, now it's $100 a test. That has unlocked a lot of lab capacity because it wasn't economical for these labs to do it at 50. It is economical at 100. So we have a contract with a couple labs to do high throughput testing, total of 18,000 tests a day on a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. So that's what we want to see so that you can get those results back. Now, our RV, where we're going to have the mobile lab, that's going to have the Cepheid point of care test. So that's a 45-minute response for each test. And as people come in, you can put a number of the cartridges in at one time and then get a result. So if you're talking about a long-term care facility, that is phenomenal. As we get more and more supplies, one of the things I'd like to do is be able to offer testing to family members of long-term care residents, because these residents haven't been able to see their families in almost 2 months. And so if you have rapid testing, you can have a son or daughter go in, test. If they're negative, then they can go see their mother or their father. And I think that would mean a lot to people. We've got to get more of the rapid tests. We have this contract now with Cepheid, which I think is $3,500 a week. But you also have Abbott Labs with a rapid test, and there's more and more being developed. There's a saliva test. There's a home test. So I think as we go, every week there seems to be more and more options on this stuff. We obviously don't want people going in who are sick, of course, and we've put a lot of restrictions. But a lot of times when these restrictions are done, people don't think about the negative consequences of that. It was necessary to do it, but it was not cost-free. And the cost was you have residents there who don't have the interaction with their families that they would like to have. So if we have the capacity to offer some tests to those families, or if they have antibodies, then I would like to see us be able to offer at least some limited visitation. I think it would mean a lot to the residents. Yes, sir.
So you've got increased testing, which would presumably lead to more positive cases, and at the same time you're partially reopening restaurants, et cetera. How do you differentiate between those two?
So what I tell people is pay less attention to the number of positive cases and more attention to the rate in which those are coming back positive. In other words, if I test 10,000 people and I get 1,000 positives, that is worse than me testing 20,000 people but getting 1,100 positives, even though there's more positives. It's because I'm testing more people, the positivity rate is down, and I think what we're seeing in the testing recently, as we've been able to expand the criteria, initially you had to be really sick per CDC guidelines. We got away from that as soon as we could to try to expand it. So what'll happen is you may have people that have no symptoms or mild symptoms come in, and maybe some people will test positive. That should be viewed as a good thing because we're identifying people who were going to carry this thing anyways, and at least you can have them self-isolate and not infect other people. So I definitely think if we're doing 25 or 30,000 tests a day, look to see what percentage positive. We have one of the lowest percentage positives of any major state for sure. The national average, I think, is about 18%. 18% of all people that test come back positive. In Florida, we're down to, with our new cases, we're probably down to about 7.5% over the last few weeks. But this last week, we're probably close to 5 or 6%. That has gone steadily down. So that's a really, really good sign. Some of our best testing days in the last 2 weeks have actually had more cases than the days before and after. But we had so many tests reported that you see that the positivity was very, very low. So our touchstones going forward are really going to be the touchstones that brought us to do the mitigation as a country to begin with. What is the stress on the hospital system? Are there available beds? Are we in danger of overwhelming the system? And if we continue to have capacity, then that means that this thing is being kept in check. If you have low positivity, again, that's another indication that things are being kept in check. When New York City first flared up, they had 60% of the tests were positive. And even now they've had a big decline, but they're still, I think, between 25 and 30% of all tests are positive. New Jersey, I think, is 45%. So when you're in that single digits, that's a really, really good place to go. And as you're expanding testing, yes, you are going to find additional positive results. But if you're doing it in a way that's broad-based with a low positivity rate, then that means things are going in a good direction.
Governor, I wrote you a letter in March thanking you. You've done an excellent job about understanding that Florida is different. And I'm going to pass it on to the League of Cities and continue to commend you for that. As we're moving forward into recovery, we appreciate your step-by-step prudent plan of moving forward. Obviously, not all of us are going to be experiencing the same thing. There are things, cosmetology, those kind of things that we would like to see. If we're continuing in a green sense where there's no problem, can we begin to move forward on some of these things locally as we do and what we have here? Local conditions warrant us doing that.
Yeah, so what we did for phase one was the White House came out with gating criteria to get into phase one. The state of Florida as a whole satisfied the gating criteria. We had a 14-day downward trend in influenza-like illnesses, 14-day downward trend in syndromatic emergency type visits where people had the COVID symptoms. We also had a decline in positive cases on a trend of 14 days, but really, or you need a positive trend in, or a downward trend in positivity, and we definitely had that. I mean, we had that very strongly. And then you have to have your hospital system able to provide crisis care. So we had that statewide, even including Miami, which is almost 40% of the cases. But when we went to phase one, I spoke with Southeast Florida. They want to get there. They are trending in a good direction, but they wanted just a little bit more time. So I had the rest of the state go. And so I wasn't going to let their condition hold back Northwest Florida. As we go forward, I really think most of the state outside of Southeast Florida is all going in the same basic direction. I don't see a huge difference between Northwest Florida. I just came from Jacksonville. But I mean, you look at like Orlando area, I mean, they've done fantastic. So I think the rest of the state will be ready to go, hopefully to phase two if the trends continue. But if we do have a situation where Central Florida is much different all of a sudden, and North Florida keeps going in a good direction, then obviously I would want to do that. I don't think I'm going to have to, though, because I think the trends are good in those other areas. And I do think that Southeast Florida is going to be able to get on track. It's they're an important part of our state's economic engine. We want to be very One of my mantras was, Miami was shut down 6 weeks ago. People were saying, the Panhandle was a different situation, so you deal with them differently, and that's what we've tried to do from the beginning. I'd have to look at that. I wasn't aware that was going on, so let us take a look at that, and we'll get back to you guys. All right, thanks. It's great to be here. Yes, sir. Yep.
Touching on this lab here locally and similar labs set up around the state, what can these residents expect as far as getting results and timelines? How long do they have to wait?
So if we're doing these labs that we've contracted with, it should be quicker than what they're used to. I think there have been times here where people have had to wait a week. That's obviously not what we want. We want to be able to turn this around in 24 to 48. That's what the contract says. But, these other contracts said that too, and they got overwhelmed. So I just want people to know this is a new system we're doing with these big labs. I think it's going to be an improvement, but this is something we're just going to have to troubleshoot along the way. But clearly, the earlier you can get the result, the more meaningful it is. Because if you're an employee,
this weekend, you must take personal responsibility and follow the rules. If you resist, you could be facing a fine of up to $500. If you haven't heard the rules yet, go to miamidade.gov/coronavirus. It's also important to remember that the order set a minimum standard, but cities can have tougher standards. Some cities have decided not to open up their parks at this time, and many have good reasons not to do it. For instance, Miami Gardens decided not to open their parks because they did not feel that they had the enforcement personnel they needed to make sure people stayed safe. County has invested heavily in enforcement, and it's paying off. We're finding most people are following the rules. As we continue moving to a new normal, we are working with our medical experts on opening up non-essential businesses. About a dozen work groups that include industry experts and our medical advisors are looking at how to safely open up so people can get back to work. The good news is that we continue to tamp down the virus, and the number of hospitalizations has started to slow. So there is light at the end of this COVID tunnel. But it will mean working differently, and that's why this is a new normal. The working groups are focused on restaurants and museums and cultural venues, small businesses, retail shops, factories, office buildings, trade and logistics, hotels, and the number one complaint, personal grooming businesses. Several of them will be working on their recommendations over the weekend. Once again, science is leading our decisions so that we can protect workers and customers. I'm also pleased to report that we continue to add more testing sites, which is key to getting the data we need as we continue to open up. The county is also hiring a consultant to track all the public health indicators from testing availability to hospitalizations. This information will help guide us as we open up businesses. On Monday, I will be announcing a new walk-up testing site in North Miami-Dade. Any questions in English before speaking in Spanish to our Hispanic audience?
Thank you, Mayor. The first question this afternoon comes from NBC6's Phil Clayton. Phil?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
First question is, it's kind of a two-part question. One, on the antibody test, can you talk a little bit about the difference of what you guys are doing as opposed like Phil going to check to see if he had the virus, just because there's 150 products out there now and people might want to go and do it themselves. And then two, some of them, including, I believe, the one, Biomedonics, has a hard time of telling the difference between the the coronavirus that causes the common cold and the new coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. You feel comfortable? I know you touched on it a little bit, but you still feel comfortable going through with the study and getting that information?
Yeah, actually, that test you're talking on, the one that we're using, I think it's called Biomedics. It's actually it's COVID-19 specific. It's not just coronaviruses, and because there are a number of coronaviruses. This one is COVID-19 specific. The ones that you buy that you can get commercially now, unless it's a lot simpler than the one that we're using, ours takes a little bit of training to administer it correctly and also to interpret the results. Sometimes we also take snapshots of the results so that we can actually look at it and analyze it a little bit deeper, and that's what's going on with the University of Miami. And so I'm not aware, I haven't kept up with the stuff that you can buy in the drugstore, but the test that we have is COVID-19 specific. You need a little training in order to do it and to interpret the results.
Any other question, Phil? Okay, let's move on now. Our next question comes from 7 News, Chris Polis. Chris, are you there? Okay, let's go then to Local 10's Ian Margol. Ian.
Hey, Mayor, how are you today?
Doing good. How about you?
Good. Another two-part question for you. You mentioned this light at the end of the tunnel. What are the experts that you're talking to telling you, I know you love this question, telling you about a timeline? And then part two of that is, even if we do end up getting to the phases where you're opening up hotels and restaurants, how much is consumer confidence going to play into tourism actually coming back to the Miami-Dade area?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm very concerned about consumer confidence and the tourism industry. And the tourism industry is key to our economy here. So, discussed it yesterday with my other group, which is the economic recovery group, and what we're going to do about tourism and how we're going to. The Greater Miami Visitors Convention Bureau has a very good plan of how to stir up tourism once we open up the hotels, once we open up the beaches. But again, I'm concerned about people coming and traveling, getting on a boat, getting on a plane, and so yeah, that's a big concern for mine. What was the first part of the question?
First part was the timeline, and the second part was how much does consumer confidence play into people actually coming back? Yeah,
I already answered the second one. The first one, the timeline, is we don't have a timeline. The timeline we do have is getting our work done and getting our plan worked out by this weekend and early next week at the latest. And so I expect most of our work to be done by this weekend. with these groups. We have a number of groups that have already kind of finished their work, and there are groups that we will convene after this first batch that will look at things, such as, sporting events and all that kind of thing. But and also, how do we open up summer camps in our parks? So there's additional work to be done, but for the most part, I think most of our work will be done. At least the plan to open should be done by the weekend, and I expect that to happen.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Our next question will be from Doug Hanks with the Miami Herald.
Hi, Mayor. Thanks. Can you talk about what medical statistics you'll be looking at to see if there's any issues with the reopening plan in terms of an increased spread? And can you also share more details on what the consultant will be looking at, who that consultant is, have they been hired, and what's their task?
Yeah, McKinsey is our consultant. They've been hired. They're internationally well-known consultant, actually been working on this issue, not only here in the United States, but also around the world. They're working on our templates. They're also working with us to coordinate and make as consistent as possible the rules throughout industries. And as I've said, you and I, the customer, when we go to a business, the rules should be about the same anywhere we go. It's the back of the house and how they operate. It's going to be a little different depending if you're a warehouse, if you're a factory, if you're a restaurant. And so those are the things that we're looking at in terms of what are we looking at with our medical experts. There's a lot of good data that we get that frankly a lot of other counties do not get, because we issued an order that hospitals have to give us data on how many critical care beds are open, how many ICU beds are open, how many ventilators do they have, how many people are on our COVID-19 patients are on ventilators, how many COVID-19 patients are in the hospital, how many were admitted, how many are discharged. And so there's a whole slew of information that we have that maybe some other folks don't have. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. Obviously, too, is the percentage of tests that are coming up back positive, and we've seen a decline in that. We've had more tests, but actually the percentage of that coming back positive is coming down a little bit. And so those are some indicators that we're going to be looking at. But remember, I always said that, look, I think we have something like 12,000 official cases of COVID-19 here. Our study indicates that that's underreported by a factor of 15 to 20 of the actual number of people that are here. And so we have to make sure that the rules that we put into place limit the spread of the virus as much as possible, because you have to assume that everybody that you meet and that you yourself could be positive for COVID-19, since most people in the beginning don't have any symptoms.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next question will be from the Islander News in Key Biscayne, Justo Ray.
That he's opening.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
The governor announced that he's opening the state parks. Do you know if Bill Baggs is on that list?
I do not know. I have to find out for you. And so we open up our parks, and I would assume that would open too, but I'll find out and see if
The concern is the beaches, obviously.
The beaches, no. I mean, no, we still have the beaches closed here. But again, I don't have jurisdiction over a state beach, right? So I've got to get with the governor's office and see what exactly his order states.
And I have a follow-up question. You mentioned summer camps, that you'll be making some plans for summer camps over the weekend. Is that?
I didn't say over the weekend. We got some time for the summer camps, but I said that by the weekend we should have plans for the majority of our businesses. And we may have a couple of more that kind of straggle in at the beginning of the week. And then we have to then have other groups that will be looking at other things that we're not looking at right now. One of them being summer camps, and then the parks programming for children in our parks and parks around the county. So yeah, those things will have to be looked at. Those are a little bit more difficult at this point to try to open up. And so a lot of it depends on what's happening with the virus. And can we do that in a safe way? It's going to be a little bit more complicated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. The next question will be from CBS 4, Jim DeFeedy.
There you go. I've now unmuted. Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for taking my question.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. So with regard to the task forces that you had working, for instance, on the ones on hotels, are you going to be incorporating those recommendations into an executive order? And like, for instance, one specific recommendation is hotels will first recall displaced employees prior to hiring new employees. Will you include that as part of the executive order? Are you allowed to include that as part of the executive order? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out, your authority when it comes to that.
My executive orders are going to be dealing with health issues, not employment issues. And so I would hope that hotels would hire their employees back. What I'm hearing from the hotel group is that they're going to have difficulty hiring the employees back. Not that they don't want to, is that they think they're going to have difficulty doing it. So, but my orders are about health and protecting the health of the people of Miami-Dade County.
Related.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, go ahead. I was listening.
So related to health, though, when it comes to hotels, as I understand, one of the recommendations is that if somebody has a fever, that the employee would then be sent home, obviously.
Yes.
I think there was some discussion in the group as to whether or not the person who is sent home should then be entitled to be paid for the time that they're home. And that was not included in the recommendations. Is that something that you would consider as part of an executive order?
Again, those are personnel decisions between the hotel and their employees. My executive orders are going to be focused on the health issues and making sure that, well, however that hotel operates, it does so in a safe manner for the employees and for the visitors of that hotel.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is from the Miami Herald, Carlos Frias. Carlos, you there?
I believe that I am. I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple questions specifically regarding restaurants as you look at reopening. First one I have is, does the CDC have a standard for reopening restaurants? Because I know right now in your groups you're discussing, 6 feet and what have you between tables, and there's been that study that was done in China about how the one person sick because of the air conditioning was able to infect 9 people at tables on either side. Is there a CDC standard already in place, and is that what you're basing your decisions on?
I'm basing my decision on CDC guidelines that I would hope that my medical experts are taking into consideration as we determine what the rules would be for restaurants. At this point, the guiding factor is the governor's order on restaurants is 25% capacity, allowing them to open outdoors. Our recommendations may be a little bit more detailed, but we have 2 to 3 medical experts on that panel, and there's been a lively discussion, and so I'll be guided by the medical experts on that panel to what's safe and what's not safe.
And to follow up, this is another issue that I've been hearing from restaurants, not just down here, but in kind of nationally, is when those places are allowed to reopen, depending on their sizes, in other words, whether that turns into 25% or 30, depending on how much the square footage calculation. A lot of them are worried, if they're operating at 25% and they're going to be paying 100% to their landlord. Is there any thought about legislation, whether it's locally or beyond statewide, about capping what landlords can charge, and secondarily, whether there is eviction protections for small businesses, just as there are eviction protections for residential? Thank you.
Right now, we don't have eviction protection for small businesses. We do have it for residents. We will not, be evicting people out of their homes or apartments during this time. With hard economic times, we won't do that. We don't usually get involved, and I hesitate to get involved between a landlord and his tenant or her tenant. That landlord may also have their own mortgage payment that they have to pay. So it's pretty hard for us to sit here and judge that. So what we want to do is get them back operating in a profitable manner. And I know that it starts out at 25%, and that way we could take a look at that after a week or two and see if we can augment that, speaking to the governor, make sure that it's done in a coordinated fashion.
Can I ask one more here if I'm not monopolizing the time here?
Yeah, no.
I'd like to ask you about those folks who are asked to come back to work. This is obviously experimental in the sense that it'll be new to us here. Folks who are now quote unquote able to work. In other words, if they're being offered their job back, be denied unemployment. But if they're worried about getting sick, or if they have someone who is at home who is immunocompromised, or frankly they just don't want to get sick, they don't want to get risk being sick and dying, obviously is the end result for some. Do you worry about that? The fact that if you open, you kind of put these people who do live paycheck to paycheck, who are on our front line, so to speak, and making $8 an hour, or what have you, washing dishes, putting them in a position where you have to take this job because you're going to lose unemployment benefits while everybody's still trying to figure things out. Thank you. I know that was rambling. I apologize.
No, but those are personal decisions. I never let perfect be the enemy of good, and I think most people want to get back to work. Those are personal decisions everybody is going to have to make, depending on what they value, and if they believe that it's risky, then that's up to them. We're going to put regulations in place that limit the risk, or else we wouldn't be opening it up. So they have to take that in consideration too. That they need to wear masks, they need to wash their hands, they need to not put their hands up to their face, all those things, and then the customers are going to have to do the same thing. And so those are regulations that we're putting in place so that we limit the spread of this virus. Is that risk down to zero? No, it's never going to be zero. But again, it's low enough so that we feel that we can always stay, that the infection rate will always be below what the capacity of our health system is to deal with it. And that's our goal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Our next question is from Patty Mazzei with the New York Times. Patty.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you, Patty. I was wondering if you had seen the video images of the cars lined up towing boats trying to get into the marina today. And
The
cars towing boats.
I'm sorry, you're kind of breaking up, Patty.
Can you hear me now?
She's asking, Mayor, if you have seen images of the cars lined up to get into the marinas today.
I'd heard that from my parks director that we reached capacity early, and yes, and so I would expect there would be a line to get in, and once we reach capacity, that's it. We can't handle any more. But this is not only for COVID-19. We've had the same issue on a beautiful summer day and a weekend where a lot of people can't get into their boats. It probably started down in Black Point, then it went to Matheson, what I heard, and then started moving north to Crandon and then to Hollover. But we only have so many spots, and once those spots are filled, then we close it up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions in English before we move on to Spanish? Going once, going twice? Okay. All right, Mayor, whenever you're ready, if you want to go ahead and make your remarks in Spanish.
Okay, here we go. Buenas tardes a todos. Quiero que este fin de semana disfruten de los parques, el mar y los campos de golf que hemos abierto. Les recuerdo que la policía va a tener cero tolerancia para los que no mantengan la distancia social. Además, se tienen que poner máscaras en ciertos lugares. Sigan las reglas y van a salvar vidas. Los expertos médicos han guiado todos los pasos que hemos tomado para abrir de una manera limitada. Quiero darle las gracias a los doctores del Departamento de Salud, el Hospital Jackson, UHealth y las escuelas de medicina de FIU y UM que han trabajado con nosotros. Hemos seguido sus consejos para prevenir las nuevas infecciones entre los residentes. Le doy gracias a los médicos de todo corazón. He consultado con las comunidades en nuestras costas, la Liga de Ciudades, los líderes del condado Broward, Monroe y Palm Beach, para que estas aperturas sean de manera coordinada. Por eso, si sale este fin de semana, debe tomar responsabilidad y seguir las órdenes. Si no cumple, puede enfrentar hasta $500 en multas. Si no ha leído las reglas, visite miamidade.gov/coronavirus para más información. Recuerden que las órdenes son el estándar mínimo, pero ciudades pueden tener órdenes más estrictas. Por ejemplo, Miami Gardens decidió no abrir sus parques porque no tenía los suficientes policías para enforzar las reglas. Mientras seguimos trabajando hacia una nueva normalidad, estamos consultando con los expertos médicos para planear cómo abrir los negocios que no son esenciales. Tenemos unos 12 grupos que incluyen líderes de industrias y expertos médicos. Ellos están analizando cómo vamos a abrir de una manera segura para que las personas puedan regresar a sus trabajos. La buena noticia es que seguimos controlando las nuevas infecciones y el número de personas en los hospitales ha comenzado a bajar. Ya vemos la luz al final del túnel. Tengan en mente que la manera en que vamos a regresar a trabajar va a ser diferente. Por eso llamamos la nueva normalidad. Estos expertos se enfocan en restaurantes, museos, centros culturales, tiendas, factorías, negocios pequeños y la industria de belleza. Ellos se pasarán el fin de semana trabajando en sus recomendaciones. Como siempre, la ciencia guiará nuestros próximos pasos para proteger a los empleados y clientes. También estoy contento de anunciar que estamos planeando abrir nuevos sitios para las pruebas de COVID-19. El lunes estaré anunciando un nuevo sitio de pruebas en el norte de Miami-Dade donde las personas pueden ir caminando. El enfoque aquí es servir a las personas que no tengan carros. La semana que viene tendrá la nueva información. Hemos contratado a un consultor para analizar todos los datos de salud pública que tenemos, desde los exámenes del virus hasta el número de personas ingresadas en los hospitales. También el estudio que hace la Universidad de Miami continúa analizando cuántas personas ya tienen anticuerpos al virus. Como les hemos aprendido de este estudio es lo mismo que le he dicho desde un principio. Todos debemos actuar como si tuviéramos el virus. Gracias a este estudio sabemos que entre 123,000 y 221,000 personas han sido expuestos al coronavirus. La mayoría de estas personas en el estudio no han tenido ningún tipo de síntoma. Es por eso, y esto es que deben seguir usando las máscaras y practicando la distancia social, además de lavarse las manos y limpiar sitios que se tocan muy a menudo. Nuestro lema es, yo te cuido y tú me cuidas. Y así podemos empezar una nueva normalidad. Ahora voy a contestar a sus preguntas.
Gracias, alcalde. La primera pregunta viene de Iván Taylor de Noticias 23. Iván.
Muchísimas gracias, Patty. ¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes, señor alcalde.
Buena, comando.
Lo que queríamos preguntarle era, hospitales de nuestra área y particularmente de Miami-Dade, como por ejemplo Jackson y Baptist, están anunciando de que la semana próxima van a retomar lo que se conoce como cirugías alternativas, todas esas que fueron pospuestas por la situación del COVID-19. Ellos dicen que están siguiendo lineamientos establecidos por el gobernador DeSantis. ¿Qué papel juega en esto el condado, Miami?
Bueno, los hospitales están regulados por el estado de la Florida y entonces en ese sentido yo estoy de acuerdo que se tiene que abrir los hospitales para ese tipo de cirugía. Muchas de esas cirugías van a salvar vidas porque esta cirugía electa, ¿no? Son cirugías como para el cáncer, etcétera. Así que yo estoy de acuerdo que se deben abrir. Tenemos la capacidad en el condado de Miami-Dade. Ya sabemos que tenemos más de 3,500 cuartos que están abiertos, que no se han usado, que se pueden usar por esta cirugía. Así que sí, estoy de acuerdo y espero que van a empezar la semana que viene. Van a empezar poquito por poquito, pero muchas personas necesitan ese tipo de servicio.
Solamente. Muchísimas gracias, señor alcalde.
Gracias.
La próxima pregunta viene de Arlie Alfaro de Telemundo 51. Arlie.
Muchas gracias, alcalde. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Quería preguntarle sobre la reapertura de los negocios no esenciales. Ya usted ha sido claro. Sin embargo, pues sabemos también que la ciudad de Miami Lakes anoche aprobó la resolución en donde le pide directamente al gobernador que se considere la reapertura de los negocios no esenciales en esa ciudad, y también Miami Beach hoy lo analizó en su reunión habitual de la ciudad. ¿Qué nos puedes decir al respecto?
Las ciudades no pueden abrir sus negocios hasta que el condado le da el permiso de abrir esos negocios. Yo creo que esa resolución me pidió a mí que le abriera los negocios, así que no lo vamos a hacer hasta que nosotros ya pasamos nuestro proceso, y cuando pasamos el proceso, esto todo va para los expertos médicos que tenemos aquí. Está trabajando con el Departamento de Salud. También antes de abrir voy a consultar con el gobernador para asegurar que los pasos que estamos tomando aquí en Miami-Dade son los pasos que él cree que son los pasos necesarios y también son consistentes con los pasos que ha tomado en el estado. Acuérdate que él dijo que las órdenes que él dio era para el resto del estado, pero no los 3 condados de Miami-Dade, Broward y Palm Beach. Y finalmente, hoy voy a hablar con los líderes de Palm Beach y Broward para ver si podemos, estas aperturas nuevas de estos negocios no esenciales, se hagan de una manera consistente entre los 3 condados.
Ciertamente, alcalde. Manny Seed, el alcalde de Miami Lakes, también me dijo que la petición era para usted también. Muchas gracias. Quería
gracias.
también otra pregunta rapidito en cuanto y esta es una pregunta que muchos padres de familia lo hacen, vamos a tener los campamentos de verano, y si podía repetir en español lo que usted dijo en referencia a esto.
Los campamentos de verano en los parques y etcétera, eso es un tema que tenemos que ahora estudiar. Después que abrimos los negocios, y al mismo tiempo vamos a tener otro comité con los expertos médicos, a ver en qué manera lo podemos hacer. Eso va a ser un poquitico más difícil porque estos campos tienen docenas y cientos de niños que están jugando todo tipo de deporte, todos juntos, y por eso es que las escuelas están cerradas hasta el final del año, porque no deseaban eso. Así que, ¿cómo lo vamos a hacer? Vamos a ver, pero eso se tiene que estudiar.
Gracias, alcalde. Buenas tardes.
Gracias a usted.
Tenemos otra pregunta. Esta viene de Doricer Alvarado de TVB Network. Doricer.
Alcalde, ¿cómo está?
Buena.
Preguntas. En primer lugar, saber en cuánto han disminuido las hospitalizaciones en los hospitales del condado. Lo dijo ayer también y hoy lo vuelve a referir, de que se ha mantenido y ha empezado a disminuir el número de hospitalizaciones. Esa es mi primera pregunta. Y la segunda pregunta también tiene que ver con el tema del aeropuerto. Están evaluando la posibilidad de reanudar algunos vuelos y quisiera saber cuál es el estudio que están realizando, qué vuelos estaríamos hablando y desde qué ciudades o desde qué países estarían hablando de reanudar estos vuelos.
Anular vuelos.
No, de reabrirlos.
No, el aeropuerto está abierto. El aeropuerto está abierto. Hay ciertos vuelos de lugares internacionales que no están prohibidos. También hay ciertos vuelos que nosotros no podemos llegar. Yo creo que Argentina está cerrado. Entonces, por eso no vamos a tener ningún tipo de vuelo de Argentina. Hemos visto que el aeropuerto ha bajado los números de pasajeros por 95%. Y no sabemos cuándo empieza otra vez. Vamos a tener más visitantes. Acuérdate que todos los hoteles están cerrados, las playas están cerradas. Así que hasta que nosotros no empecemos a hacer eso, no esperamos más personas que van a llegar aquí en Miami por el aeropuerto. Y la primera pregunta, otra vez, ¿cuál es?
Con respecto a lo de los vuelos, entonces todavía no están estudiando retomar algunos de esos vuelos que han sido cancelados.
No, la cancelación, nosotros no cancelamos ningún tipo de vuelo. Es los Estados Unidos, lo que es el FAA, cancela el punto de origen. Se puede ser que está cancelado, de vuelos de ese lugar no pueden entrar en Miami. Pero no, los vuelos, lo que es la cantidad de pasajeros es simplemente porque nosotros no tenemos nada aquí que está abierto. Así que no hay muchas personas que están viniendo aquí para viajar o tener una vacación porque no hay nada que hacer. Los hoteles no están abiertos. Las personas que están viajando están usando Miami como un punto donde van a otro lugar, o si no, las personas que viven aquí o tienen familias aquí, esas son las personas que están viajando hoy en día.
La primera pregunta era con respecto a los números de hospitalizaciones, que habla de que se han mantenido y han comenzado también a disminuir. ¿Cómo lo están tomando? ¿Cuántos diarios, cuántas hospitalizaciones se están dando?
Una vez al día todos los hospitales dan estos tipos de datos. Antes era 2 veces al día, pero ya no es necesario. Por la mañana a las 10:15 sabemos cuántos cuartos de hospitales que se llaman urgent care, no urgent care, pero cuartos de hospitales están abiertos, cuántos cuartos de ICU están abiertos, cuántos ventiladores no se están usando, cuántas personas están ingresadas en el hospital que tienen COVID-19, cuántas nuevos pacientes tienen que tienen COVID-19 del día anterior y cuántos ya han salido que tenían el COVID-19 pero salieron del hospital. Hemos visto que había un pico de más de 700 personas que estaban en el hospital y ahora se ha bajado, está manteniendo un nivel y ha bajado. Nunca hemos visto lo que los expertos decían que iba a pasar, que era un surge, un pico nuevo. Eso no ha sucedido y por eso tenemos la confianza que ya tiempo es para empezar a abrir ciertas cosas aquí de una manera segura, y si podemos mantener ese nivel o bajar ese nivel, siempre estar debajo de lo que es la capacidad de nuestro sistema de salud, entonces eso es lo que tenemos que hacer para que lo que es el rate de infection, ¿sabes? La cifra de infección siempre nunca suba, que se quede bastante estable o empiece a bajar.
Gracias, alcalde.
¿Ya?
Gracias, alcalde. Ahora, ¿alguna otra pregunta en español? Okay, I think we've wrapped up in Spanish, Mayor. I do have one follow-up question for you in English from
Sure.
Phil at NBC6. Phil?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, I appreciate it. This is for another reporter on another story, but question about essential or non-essential business. So a question about home visits by certain service providers. If people who work in non-essential business, such as hair and nail salons, are instead advertising their services online and doing home visits, are they violating either local or state emergency orders or violating existing laws that require business licenses for such operations? What's your take on that?
Well, my take on it is that they shouldn't be doing it. I'm not sure they're violating a law. I'm gonna take a look at it, but if you're a hair salon and if you're a barber shop and if you're a barber and we closed you down for a reason, all right? Now that for you to go somewhere else and get your clients at home, it doesn't make it any less dangerous. It doesn't make it any more safer. So we're trying to figure out how to open up those businesses so they do it in a safe manner. And so no, and that's not an essential business. And so really a lot of it depends on where you live. Like if you live in the city of Miami, apparently if you live in the city of Miami, you're not going out for doing an essential business, then you shouldn't be going out. I don't think they've taken that order out. And so how somebody who cuts hair goes to somewhere in the city and cuts hair, they're not supposed to do that.
Sir, I appreciate your time very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. I think that'll do it for this afternoon. So before we move on to Lionel with the Haitian Creole translation, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Have a great one. Have a good weekend. Enjoy.
Thank
It's
you.
beautiful.
Lionel with Haitian Creole, go ahead.
Mon pam c'est Lionel de Roubaud, département communication contre Miami-Dade. Nous parlons pour nous, déclaration Mayor Carlos Gimenez fait pour ouvrir conférence de presse aujourd'hui. Bonjour tout le monde. Nous pral gagner un bon week-end et moi souhaiter que tout le monde capable de jouer bon temps que nous pral gagner sous de l'eau avec nos parcs avec terrain golf. Nous remercier tout le monde, même après nous connaître que pral gen zéro tolérance si moun pas pratiquer distance sociale et si ou pas porter masque ou l'on aller dans parc avec terrain golf. La police compte Miami-Dade pour aller mettre ensemble avec groupe qui là pour faire respecter et ça qui passe sous de loi quand pour garde code avec groupe qui là pour capable